There are places you grow up hearing about, where genius is born, where futures are made. They shine in brochures. They speak in glossy slogans. But when he showed up, holding a folded invitation and a bag packed with hope, all he heard was, "You don't belong here." He stood still. Not because he didn't want to speak, but because deep down, part of him feared that maybe this was always coming. Maybe someone had finally said aloud what the world had been whispering since he was 5. His shoes were clean. His shirt was pressed. His mother had told him to smile when he got there. He tried. But all he saw was a guard who didn't care what the paper said. Didn't care about the letterhead. Didn't care about the name on the envelope. Behind those doors were labs, and light, and opportunity. But between him and all of it, stood a man who only saw what he looked like. That moment should have ended the story. And for too many kids, it does. But someone was watching. Someone who read more than headlines and resumes. Someone who remembered what it felt like to be on the outside, and what it takes to pull someone in. And in the silence that followed, a voice cut through. 7 words. Just 7. And everything changed. Jeremiah Carter didn't live in a city known for winners. His neighborhood didn't produce prodigies. It raised survivors. By 12, he already knew how to solve problems that had nothing to do with math. He could stretch a meal. He could navigate silence when the lights shut off. He knew when to speak, and when to stay invisible. But there was one place he didn't disappear. At his desk, beneath a flickering bulb, surrounded by formulas taped to his wall, he was more than a kid. He was a mind in motion. When the school counselor first mentioned a program for high-achieving students, he didn't flinch. He already had a folder full of robotics ideas. A science journal with his name on every page. A dream that lived louder than his zip code. The letter came folded in thirds. It was real. Stamped. Signed. He'd been invited to the Center for Scientific Excellence. He didn't know what to pack. So he brought everything that mattered: notes, sketches, an extra pair of socks, and his best button-up shirt, still warm from the iron his mom borrowed down the hall. No one else from his school had ever been invited. Not once. His principal took a photo. His teacher cried. His mom held his face, looked him in the eyes, and said, "They're lucky to have you." He didn't talk much on the ride there. The bus windows blurred the city into streaks of light. Towering buildings replaced cracked sidewalks. Everything felt unfamiliar. But Jeremiah sat straight, bag on his lap, holding the letter like a badge. He was early. On purpose. He wanted time to breathe. To walk slowly. To take it in. But before he could even step inside, his name, his effort, his invitation, none of it seemed to matter. Because the man at the door didn't look at his paper. Only at his face. He had rehearsed this moment. In the mirror. On the ride. Even while lacing his shoes. A nod. A smile. A quiet thank you. What he didn't expect, what nobody warned him about, was the kind of wall you can't climb. It wasn't made of brick or steel. It wore a name tag and held a clipboard. The security guard didn't shout. He didn't argue. Just pointed. "Where's your ID?" he asked. Jeremiah lifted the letter. Its seal still crisp. The official stamp from the center visible beneath the fold. He explained, calmly, that this was his confirmation. That the office had emailed his teacher. That today was the day. The man didn't blink. He leaned back, arms crossed. Checked a list. Shook his head again. "If your name's not here, I can't let you in." Around them, people flowed in, badges clipped, lanyards swinging. Suits pressed. Polished shoes. They didn't slow down. Didn't look back. Didn't see the boy at the edge. Jeremiah stepped aside. Tried to call the number on the letter. No signal. He walked to the end of the entrance ramp. Waited. 5 minutes. 10. A staff member walked by. He raised his hand. She smiled politely and kept walking. He stood there, letter in hand, as though if he held it still enough, long enough, it might unlock something. A door. A voice. A reason. But the guard's voice returned, firmer now. I told you, son. This place isn't for visitors without clearance. No explanation. No apology. Just dismissal in the form of procedure. And in that moment, the air changed. The buzz of potential dimmed. The glass walls no longer shimmered. The building no longer looked like a dream. It felt like a warning. He didn't cry. Didn't argue. He tightened the strap on his backpack and stepped backward. Not because he wanted to leave, but because the message had been made clear, you aren't who we expected. And still, he stayed. Just long enough to hope someone would notice. Someone would care. There are moments that arrive quietly. No applause. No spotlight. Just stillness. He didn't see the man at first. Too much noise inside. Not from crowds, but from thoughts. What went wrong? Did he miss a detail? Was the letter a mistake? Across the plaza, feet slowed. A navy blazer, silver cufflinks. One figure, alone, stopped moving. Dr. Marcus Hallman. Lead scientist. Published author. Graduate of institutions that filled brochures like the one Jeremiah had read until the corners frayed. He didn't usually stand at the front entrance. Today, he had paused to take a call. Then he noticed the hesitation. The delay in movement. The absence of welcome. He watched long enough to see more than a misunderstanding. He saw habit. Familiar posturing. The kind of refusal you don't learn from policy, but repetition. He crossed the pavement slowly. One hand in his coat pocket. Each step deliberate. He didn't call out. Didn't raise his voice. He let proximity speak first. Jeremiah looked up. Unsure whether to explain, step back, or say nothing at all. The security guard glanced over, straightened his stance, and spoke quickly, "Sir, he doesn't have a badge, he says he's here for a tour." Dr. Hallman didn't respond right away. He looked at Jeremiah, then down at the letter held like a passport, smudged at the edges but still proud. Then he turned. Faced the man who had blocked the door. His voice was low. Controlled. Final. "You're fired. And he's coming with me." 7 words. No build-up. No argument. Just authority that didn't need volume. The guard stepped back, eyes wide. No reply. He knew the face. The name. The weight behind both. Jeremiah didn't move. Not immediately. As if waiting for someone to reverse it, to call it back. To remind him this wasn't part of the script. But Hallman nodded. A single gesture that meant, "You belong here." And together, without fanfare, they stepped through the doors. What waited on the other side wasn't just technology, innovation, or science. It was the simple fact that someone had finally said, without needing to explain it, "You matter." The air inside was different. Not cooler. Not cleaner. Just awake. Every step pulled him further from the space he'd just left. The silence of rejection replaced by a hum, alive with code, mechanics, purpose. There were no signs saying "Welcome, Jeremiah." No ceremony waiting at the elevator. But there didn't need to be. Because what he saw next told him more than any speech ever could. People who looked like him weren't being escorted out. They were leading projects. Shaping research. Building futures from formulas once locked behind doors. He passed a room where a woman in a green head wrap reviewed data sets alongside a team of interns. They nodded as she spoke. She didn't have to shout to be heard. In another corner, two young engineers, both black, both under 30, discussed thermal shielding on a model spacecraft. One paused to greet Dr. Hallman, then turned to Jeremiah and said, "You in the summer program?" It wasn't mockery. It wasn't surprise. It was invitation. Jeremiah nodded, barely managing a smile. His hands stayed close to his sides, unsure whether he should touch anything, or just watch. But Hallman walked beside him, not behind, not ahead. As if they were already colleagues. They stopped in front of a prototype, compact, quiet, beautiful in its simplicity. "One of our students built that," Hallman said. "He started with cardboard and a phone motor. Now it's being reviewed by NASA." Jeremiah leaned forward. Not to inspect. To understand. His eyes didn't widen in shock. They narrowed in focus. This wasn't fantasy. This was within reach. The lab doors kept opening. And every room revealed something more than machines. It revealed what the world rarely shows kids like him, possibility without permission. And in that moment, he didn't think about the guard. Or the entrance. Or the waiting. He thought about his sketchbook. The designs he drew in the margins of old notebooks. The bridge he once imagined between his block and the moon. He didn't feel lucky. He didn't feel out of place. He felt seen. And as Hallman rested a hand lightly on his shoulder, he realized something even greater: he wasn't a guest in this place. He was part of its future. He didn't take home a trophy that day. No one handed him a medal. But something far more valuable had shifted. Jeremiah Carter entered that building thinking he had to prove himself. He left knowing he didn't have to explain who he was. This story isn't rare because kids like him are uncommon. It's rare because too often, no one steps in. There are thousands of Jeremiahs. Focused. Gifted. Ready. But turned away quietly, long before someone calls their name. They wait outside locked rooms. They sit at the edge of opportunity. They fill notebooks with ideas no one asks to see. And if no one interrupts that silence, they begin to believe the walls were always there. But walls aren't natural. They're built by policies, assumptions, fear. And they're reinforced when no one speaks up. What Dr. Hallman did wasn't dramatic. It wasn't heroic. It was necessary. He didn't offer Jeremiah charity. He restored what should have been granted without question: access, respect, recognition. And somewhere, right now, a kid is standing at another gate. Holding a letter. Hoping someone will look past the outfit, the accent, the silence. This isn't about one building. It's not about a single program or a moment of confrontation. It's about what we guard, and who we let in. Because if doors only open for the expected, then we will never discover what the unexpected could have built. And the truth is, greatness doesn't always wear a badge. Genius doesn't always arrive with credentials. Sometimes it shows up quietly, early, holding a folded letter, waiting for someone to make room. Some stories don't end, they ripple. Long after the applause fades. Long after the moment passes. Jeremiah didn't post about that day. He didn't tell his classmates everything that happened. He didn't need to. Because something internal had shifted. He began walking differently. Asking bigger questions. Applying for things he once thought were for other people. Because now, he knew the truth: excellence isn't something you stumble into. It's something you already carry. The world either sees it, or doesn't. And someone did. That's why this story matters. Not because of a dramatic scene. Not because of who got fired, but because of who was finally seen, and what happened when one person refused to look away. For every Jeremiah who gets in, there's another still waiting. A student who rehearsed their introduction, printed their invitation, practiced their smile, only to find a closed gate and no explanation. The question isn't whether they exist. It's whether we will notice before the silence settles too deep. And for the teens watching this, maybe you've stood outside places that were never built with you in mind. Maybe you've heard "not yet," "not you," or "not now" more times than you can count. But don't shrink. Don't wait to be chosen by people who forgot how to recognize brilliance when it doesn't wear a tie. You don't have to match their mold to matter. You are not the exception. You are the possibility. And maybe one day, you'll be the one holding the door open. Have you ever been told you didn't belong somewhere? Have you ever felt invisible, even while doing everything right? What would have happened if Dr. Hallman hadn't noticed Jeremiah? Tell us below. Your voice might be the reminder someone else needs tonight. If this story stirred something in you, share it. With a friend. With a teacher. With someone who's been told they're too late, too quiet, too different. Because stories don't just inform. They open doors. They remind us what's possible when someone chooses to see clearly. Jeremiah's story wasn't a miracle. It was what happens when someone refuses to let brilliance be blocked by a badge. You are not alone. You are not less. You are not a mistake. You belong. And you don't need permission to keep going.